The afternoon rain drummed a relentless, uneven rhythm against the coffee shop windows, blurring the city outside into a smear of gray and slate. Inside, the air smelled of roasted beans and damp wool. Elias sat at the far table, his laptop screen casting a pale, rectangular glow across his hands. He was focused on the cursor blinking on the page, a steady, mechanical pulse that matched the ticking of the wall clock. Then, the door chimes shattered the quiet. It was a sharp, metallic note that cut through the low hum of the room. A gust of cold, wet air followed, swirling around the entryway as a woman stepped inside. She shook her umbrella, the droplets scattering like glass beads onto the floorboards. Elias looked up, his movement automatic, expecting a stranger. Instead, his gaze locked onto the figure by the counter. The world in the shop seemed to tilt on its axis. He stopped breathing. The hum of the espresso machine faded into a dull roar. It was Sarah. 20 years of distance, of separate cities and separate lives, evaporated in the space of a single heartbeat. She was standing only 10 feet away. Elias remained motionless, his fingers still curled around the edge of the table. He watched her from the shadows of his corner, afraid that if he moved, the image would shatter. She was standing by the counter, waiting for the barista to acknowledge her. She shifted her weight, and then she did it. She reached up with her right hand and tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear. It was a small, precise movement, a ghost of a gesture he had watched 1,000 times in the quiet aisles of their university library. The sight of it bypassed his logic and struck directly at his memory. The 30 years of silence, the missed letters, and the separate paths they had carved through the world suddenly felt like nothing more than a thin veil. He saw the way she tilted her head, the way her shoulders relaxed as she scanned the room. The air between them seemed to vibrate with the weight of things left unsaid. She turned then, her eyes sweeping across the tables, and for a second, she looked right through him. Then, her gaze snapped back. Her eyes widened, the pupils dilating. The distance between them vanished in a single, breathless moment. She took a step forward, and Elias finally pushed his chair back, his legs shaking as he stood to meet her. They navigated the narrow aisle between the tables, the space between them shrinking until they were face to face. Neither spoke. The noise of the shop, the hiss of steam, the clatter of ceramics seemed to recede into a dull background hum. They found a corner table, tucked away from the window in the rain. Elias pulled out a chair, the wood scraping harshly against the floor, and sat. Sarah followed, settling into the seat opposite him. Between them, 2 mugs arrived, the dark liquid swirling. Steam rose in thin, translucent ribbons, curling upward like ghosts of the years they had spent apart. Elias watched the vapor drift, his hands resting flat on the cool, scarred surface of the table. He looked at her, really looked at her, noting the way she held her mug with both hands, the way she blew on the surface to cool it. "You still take your coffee black," he said. Sarah looked up, her expression softening. She smiled, a slow, familiar curve of the lips that reached her eyes. "And you?" she replied. "Still tap your pen." The initial hesitation vanished as they began to speak. It was not a tentative reintroduction, it was a continuation. Elias spoke of a book he had finished, and Sarah finished his thought before he reached the end of the sentence. The rhythm of their exchange returned with a speed that felt almost dangerous. Every pause was filled with an understanding that required no explanation. They leaned in, the table between them shrinking as the outside world, the rain against the glass, faded into irrelevance. Sarah laughed at a memory, a sharp, bright sound that made Elias look up, his pen still tapping against the wood. It was as if the 3 decades of silence were merely a long, interrupted sentence, a breath held for 30 years that was finally being released. They moved from the past to the present with startling fluidity, discussing current projects and old regrets as if they had shared a breakfast only yesterday. The terrifying ease of it caught them both off guard. There was no need to explain the years in between. The familiarity was a language they both still spoke fluently.
If you made it this far, you already know the vibe. Hit that like button, subscribe for more, and don't miss what's coming next. New content, real stories, every week. See you in the next one.